Hello, and welcome back to the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Arthur, PMW's Multimedia Editor. On today's episode of the show, it's back to basics for the first time in a while. I'm joined by our news reporter, Reem Makari, to do a little bit of a deep dive into some of the biggest stories from across the website from over the past fortnight. We tuck into everything that's been percolating across the news desk, namely some exciting ad suite upgrades for Netflix and the launch of ChatGPT's new AI browser, Atlas, coming to you from OpenAI. And we also hit the other big talking points across the world of performance marketing right now. So for a quickfire news roundup, it's time to sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. Reem, hello, and welcome back to the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast studio. How are we today?
I'm good. It's good to be back, Joe. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you. It's been a couple of weeks off doing some very sort of in-depth interviews. I'm a little bit tired from sort of sitting through, and you've got to be very switched on during a lot of those chats and discussions I've had over the last couple of weeks. It's nice to be back in the studio, back here with you for another editorial chat. I figured we haven't done a news roundup in a little while now for our listeners, and there's, as always, been a ton of news across the industry that we've been reporting on. And as our news reporter, I thought, who better to join us than you to do a little bit of a news roundup?
Yeah, although I will call both of us out for not thinking of this, which is that neither of us are Halloween ready. None of us have dressed in costume. Put on any headbands or anything.
This is the Halloween episode. You're right. You've clued onto that. So sorry to disappoint those of you that are watching. We haven't dressed up. Although you did have a wardrobe change just before we got started.
Yes, that's true. I had a very noisy jacket on, and now our producer has made me take it off.
Yeah, an audio-based change of outfit, which you don't often get. One of the biggest news stories from the past week that's still percolating now is the introduction of Atlas, ChatGPT's web browser. You and I were just experimenting with this before we got on air. First off, what did you make of it? What's the first AI browser you've used like?
I don't really get the difference, honestly, because the
difference to like a Chrome or a Safari, or the difference to ChatGPT?
To ChatGPT. It's definitely different than a normal browser. It's different to the way that, Chrome looks like or Safari looks like. But when you search a prompt, the discussion that you get is basically like ChatGPT. And actually, because you link it with your ChatGPT account, your entire ChatGPT history is on there as well. So there's not really a difference. So the only thing you get is a bunch of links to different articles and sources, which anyway, sometimes ChatGPT does do that. It gives you the sources. So I don't really get the appeal personally, but I haven't experimented that much.
Early returns based off about 2.5 minutes of playing around feels very ChatGPT-esque, which I suppose it might. A quick rundown of the story though, OpenAI, they recently announced the launch of ChatGPT's first web browser, Atlas. It's available on the Mac operating system only for now, but it's one of the first large language models to have its own web browser. So you're browsing the web through a ChatGPT fueled browser, as opposed to the likes of Bing, Safari, or Chrome that you might be more familiar with. I suppose it's more than anything just another source for people to go and conduct their search activity. I guess it streamlines, if you know that you're just going to use ChatGPT, then you can go there directly and you don't have to go via Chrome or anywhere else beforehand.
I don't know what you think of this, but I don't know how widely adopted the new ChatGPT browser is going to be, because I think if you think about it as in terms of different AI models, if you compare ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude AI, all of those, I think majority of people that are new to AI or have started experimenting with using AI, their first point is going to be going to ChatGPT, because that's the one that went viral first.
It's got the most notoriety name-wise.
Yeah, that's the one that became the most accessible. So the first thing that you do when you're trying to experiment with AI is likely go on ChatGPT and then try out different other ones. Like I'm still getting the hang of ones like Gemini and Claude AI personally, but ChatGPT is one I'm more familiar with. And then when you look at browsers, I think people are used to using Chrome, and they're used to using Safari, and they're used to using, other different ones that they've just been using for the longest amount of time, that I don't really find a switch to Atlas being very realistic.
It's an interesting one, and I know we'll get into some of the experts' takes on this in a moment, because one that stuck out to you had a very similar
Yeah.
take as that. But there's one little nugget to do with Atlas that interested me. It's obviously OpenAI. Microsoft is one of the biggest investors in that company, and Microsoft's browser is Bing. The reporting is essentially that ChatGPT uses Bing to inform a lot of its citations and its responses. It appears that Atlas has been built to incorporate Google and Chrome's responses in there somewhere, which is a little bit of a pivot away from. I'm trying to find it in the story. So within the tabs that you open up on Atlas, there is a link to Google at the top of each set. And we did sort of see that when we experimented with it. And that indicates that the browser's search features are powered by Google and not Bing, at least for some responses you might get. It's interesting, that little nugget, because one, it's not Microsoft's browser that's fueling the responses. And two, it might mean that Atlas represents somewhere you can search in ChatGPT and then more traditional in Google and the more traditional search responses alongside one another in essentially the same window. You can just open up two tabs, and for one question you've got ChatGPT responses just there, and then on the other side you've got responses from Chrome and from Google. So it's an interesting little nugget, I suppose.
Yeah, and also, I mean, what you say about Microsoft and OpenAI, that's quite interesting, because we did have an article come out a while back about Microsoft diversifying its AI partnerships and kind of shifting away from OpenAI a bit. So I wonder if this is one of the first steps where we're seeing them separate a little bit, and that's going to be the way that their partnership is from now on, even though they are the biggest investor and not just like one of the biggest investors of OpenAI.
Now, let's do a rapid fire reactions to this, because obviously we want to hear about how this is relevant to brands and advertisers, aside from being another search space that fragments the market more and is another area for advertisers to inevitably consider investing in. What stood out to you from our reaction piece? Any thoughts from our experts that you think are particularly relevant?
I've got one from Fox Agency. Like you said, very much aligns with what I was thinking. But if you'll excuse me, I don't have the full quote because I have clicked away from the browser. But I've got notes on what exactly was said, which is that the launch of Atlas is considered fantastic, but the widespread adoption will be challenging because of competition from other established browsers, so ones like Chrome and Safari. It also predicts that other platforms are soon going to be adopting AI features. So all of these different browsers will start to adopt AI, and it will become more of the norm, which will make it even more competitive for Atlas to stand out. And then also that this might lead to accelerating the rollout of AI mode in Chrome and Google. And I think that's a very good point, because AI mode is already there in the UK. I don't know how many other countries it's rolled out in.
It's not globally available yet, but here in the UK we have it AI mode in Chrome and in Google.
And I've tried it out a few times. To be fair, I've been more interested in AI overviews than I have in AI mode, just because I find it a bit hard to shift from Google to AI.
It's a weird middle ground between overviews and like Gemini, for example. Yeah.
And it's just like you're kind of used to your normal routine. So for me, I'm like, I don't really know if I want to go over AI mode, but AI overviews has grown on me. But yeah, I mean, I think definitely the rollout will come out sooner than we expect. It'll become more global, and then that will be even more competition for Atlas. So I think yes, it's a great move for them, especially in terms of like monetization, which I think the quote mentions as well. But they are going to find it very, very hard to break into this market when there's already so much competition, where if you compare their AI developments and large language models in that market, they're the ones that are more ahead.
I completely understand the sentiment there, and that the search market's already incredibly fragmented.
Yeah.
This move is going to fragment it further. And you touched on a big point there that I think is why ultimately what's fueled this move from OpenAI. And it comes from that quote from Josh Boot, head of organic performance at Fox Agency. That's who said the quote you're referring to there. What this search engine will allow OpenAI to do is make money.
Yeah.
OpenAI hasn't yet turned a profit. So with the combination of browser and search engine, it will be better placed to monetize their services for the people that are there within it, similar to the way that Google did it with paid search.
Mm-hmm.
So as it brings ads into ChatGPT, which is something we've reported on, we expect to see, I imagine Atlas will very soon see ads as well, and it makes the channels for monetization a little bit clearer for OpenAI. So they might have become a first mover in this space because they needed to, out of necessity, to turn a profit sooner rather than later, more than anything else. But, you know, is it a huge paradigm shift in the search landscape? Well, only time will tell.
Yeah.
But certainly in this format, as we've seen it, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'll definitely see them monetize a lot better across ChatGPT than they will across Atlas, at least for the moment. We'll see.
We've got another story to touch on quickly. This was one that you covered, so you can tell us all about it. Netflix records its best ad sales quarter ever for Q3 of 2025, despite disappointing earnings. Seems like a little contradiction there. So could you explain that one for us, Reem?
Yes, so it's worth flagging the disappointing earnings don't really have to do with Netflix's performance this quarter overall. They had some tax issues and had to give out a bigger payment than expected, which meant that they didn't hit one of their targets. But they also said that they don't expect this to be a problem in the later quarters. So it's not necessarily having to do with anything that they've done differently or their actual performance. But I mean, great news for them in terms of recording their strongest ad sales quarter and then expecting to double that as well this year. They don't release the exact numbers for ad revenue, which I think because they're still developing in that area and they're still coming out with new formats, maybe they're not ready to be releasing that. But I do want them to, because I kind of want to see how much it's increasing quarter by quarter, especially since more and more people are leaning in towards Netflix's ad tier than they are towards subscription because of things like cost of living and people wanting to save money. The next thing that they mentioned in their earnings report was that they will be introducing new formats, more AI-driven, interactive, programmatic ad formats. So more personalization coming out of that, more engagement. And I think that's going to be very, very interesting to see, especially if they're using their data to target specific audiences with different ads that they would like, different ads that they engage with, maybe making it more interactive. Things like I think Amazon Prime's already Prime Video's already been doing that, where you can kind of pause and do a purchase, or scan a QR code. Netflix might do a bit more of that. So yeah, they're definitely investing and growing a lot more in the ad space than they have before.
It's a little bit of a red herring, really, the sort of disappointing earnings that they've reported for Q3. As you said, it's fueled by a couple of legal implications that are seen to be, their bugaboos for this quarter and this quarter only.
Yeah.
But the rumors 12 months ago were, has Netflix's audience plateaued? It's got to find new areas for profit because there's only so much that they can get out of subscriptions before they've sort of saturated that space. And for them, and perhaps for even their competitors, they might be relieved to see that this quarter was very strong for ad sales. And they're reported here in your story that they haven't revealed the exact figures, but it's on track to more than double ad revenue year on year, which is significant, and it's still building out these offerings. And as you said, for brands and advertisers listening who want to invest in CTV, well, it sounds like Netflix is going to have a whole new ad suite ready for you sooner rather than later. So that's really, really exciting. And you mentioned there's a lot going on in the CTV space. Prime in particular, its ad tier as well is one that I think is really popular among subscribers. And it's going to be on the likes of Disney Plus and HBO and Paramount to respond. But Netflix certainly appears to be reaffirming its position as a leader in the category, particularly with its success as an advertiser so far.
Yes, and I think another area that they're really thriving in that's making their ad business even more successful is the partnerships that they've been launching. So a couple of months back, not a couple of months back, like
A couple of weeks back.
Couple of weeks back, they've signed a partnership with Amazon Ads, and then there was one with Spotify as well. So they're bringing a whole
That
lot
was
of
Amazon. Is it Netflix and Spotify or Amazon and Spotify?
Netflix and Spotify as well.
Wow, everyone's
Yeah.
just partnering up.
Yeah. So they're bringing a bunch of video podcasts onto
That's
Netflix.
right. Yeah.
And that was under one of the Spotify exclusive podcasts. I think it was The Ringer. Yeah, so they're
I should
they're
have known that.
growing.
You're exactly right. It's the Ringer podcast, the Bill Simmons podcast, which I listen to religiously. I don't watch it, otherwise I'd know that it's now on Netflix. But yeah, it's partnership.
Well, if you need
Central.
something to binge now, it's on Netflix. But I mean, it's great that they're growing these partnerships, and it's making sure that they're making smart investments and setting out for the future and working with competitors rather than trying to avoid everything that they're doing. I think they're being a bit strategic there. Good news for Netflix.
They're almost like seeding an oligopoly. It's like, we don't want to monopolize the space and become the player. There's a few players that are going to coexist, but if we all sort of partner up and work together, we can make it very hard for any new entrants to succeed. I think that's sort of part of the broader strategic play, beyond just, how can we increase our revenue and stay afloat as best we can. So kudos to you, Netflix, and good luck to everybody else. We can also tease, I suppose, for listeners that was one of the first Q3 earnings reports to come through.
Yes.
But keep an eye out across the website over the coming weeks, because we'll have a roundup of a lot of the big tech platforms' earnings reports as they come to light. And Reem, you'll probably be across that, and you have been on recent quarters. So there's lots to look forward to.
Yeah, so it'll be Google, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, a few others most likely, but they usually drop out of nowhere and then we end up covering them. So yeah, do keep an eye out.
We'll cover all the big players, and then any ones of particular interest. If there's any very big returns or someone takes a dive, we'll make sure that you're across it. Before we finish up, there's two ongoing stories that we covered earlier today, and we expect to hear more from throughout the week. So we wanted to just catch our listeners up on where they're at. The first one being the US and China have reportedly nearly finalized the TikTok sale deal. Do you want to give our listeners the latest on this? Because we're expecting an update on Thursday, which will be the day this podcast launches.
Obviously, the US and China TikTok deal has been a very ongoing story for a long while now. But apparently, they have finalized the framework of the deal, which is going to hand ownership to the US. And this way, the app won't be banned in the US anymore. And they've finalized that, given, I think, 6 out of 7 board seats to US-based owners. So they have the majority control rather than China. Currently, the main investors are looking to be Oracle, Silver Lake, MGX. Now, they're going to be meeting this week, the president of the US and president of China, and they'll be giving their final orders for the deal, and it's going to be finalized. Thing is, they've been saying that for months. Every time the ban comes to expiring, the extension comes to close to expiring, they end up saying the same thing. I think they said this a few months back. So will they actually finalize it on Thursday? Hopefully, because that means the story will be done and over with and we no longer have to report on it as much. But we'll see. I don't know if they're going to end up changing their minds.
Not much more to add to that, really, other than we cross our fingers and hope. But that's the latest update. It certainly feels like this is the closest we've been to a deal.
Yeah.
And it is slowly but surely eking closer and closer to reaching some sort of resolution. And I'd hazard a guess that the resolution is not going to be the apps permanently deleted from US app stores and totally banned. I think they're going to figure out some sort of middle ground. It certainly seems like they're on that path. To finish off, before we let you all go, another ongoing story that came across the desk this morning is Apple has claimed that it may be forced to disable its controversial app tracking transparency, ATT, across European countries, particularly Germany and Italy were cited as countries posing difficulties for them due to tracking roadblocks. So essentially, there's been some intensified lobbying efforts in Germany, Italy, and across Europe. Complaints for issues to do with the app tracking transparency regulations and whether or not Apple is adhering to those regulations as much as it should be. And Apple seems a little bit fed up with all of the roadblocks that are coming from GDPR and European countries, and is, well, not threatening, but saying that its hand might be forced to just remove ATT entirely. It's big news. I mean, those of you listening will know what ATT is, but in case you don't, it is essentially giving users of apps across Apple the option to allow other applications and third-party websites to track their behavior in a given app for advertising and data collection purposes. They can either accept that tracking or they can decline it entirely. And you've had companies like Meta saying that it's anti-competitive and it's hurting smaller businesses, not letting them, and it's making it harder for good advertising and the collection of data. Then on the other hand, you've had regulatory bodies like those in Germany claiming that it's sort of faux privacy in the name of giving Apple market power over everyone else's data. Those are all allegations, of course, but that's sort of the two sides of this story, with Apple in the middle being a little bit frustrated.
It sounds like, if you're just reading the description of it, it sounds like what Apple is doing is the right thing because they're protecting user privacy, giving them transparency, allowing them to consent to whether they want their data being used for that or not. But at the same time, there's a lot of fear around cookies and data and sharing your data. And I think when people get that notification of, do you want to give your data towards advertising purposes, they're most likely going to say no if they don't actually understand what that means, which means it's less opportunity for those other companies. So what they're actually doing, like you said, is not really beneficial to them, and it's not actually protecting their privacy, because then they are the only ones that are taking that user data, allegedly.
Yeah, I think Eric Sofer, sorry if I've got your surname wrong, Eric, who's the general partner of Hercules Capital, he put out a post on LinkedIn that sort of summed up the issue reasonably well. He called ATT a perverse and destructive policy, adding that it represented a naked power grab that materially benefited Apple and was self-preferencing on its face and resulted in far more invasive privacy abuses proliferating. Now, that's just Eric's opinion on it, but essentially it shows that on one hand, a lot of regulatory bodies believe that Apple is giving itself preferential treatment with the implication of ATT. And on the other hand, well, not on the other hand, but also upset at Apple, other companies like Meta who want access to people's data for data collection and advertising purposes. I mean, we know data is a very valuable commodity, and they certainly don't want Apple to have all of it. So it's an interesting story. It's ongoing. So we'll have to wait and see whether or not Apple do make good on their claim that they might withdraw ATT across parts of Europe. We'll have to wait and see. But with all that said, that's our relatively quickfire news roundup from everything from the past fortnight or so. A big thank you to Reem for joining me today.
Thank you, Joe.
And that concludes this episode of the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. A big thank you to my guest this week, PMW's news reporter, Reem Makari, for joining me to talk about all of the biggest headlines from across PMW's news desk over the past couple of weeks, and to give you some teasers for what to expect in the coming days and weeks. I hope that's caught all of you up. I'm conscious that it's very easy to fall behind all of the news in the world of performance marketing and advertising more broadly. It's incredibly difficult to keep up sometimes. So I hope that was a nice, succinct way for you to make sure that you aren't missing any of the big headlines. So big thank you to Reem for joining me for that discussion, and be sure to hit up the PMW website for all the latest and greatest from Adland. A big thank you, of course, to you, the loyal listener, for tuning in each and every week as you do. We will be back, of course, in 7 days' time with another episode of the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. In the meantime, don't forget, if you haven't already, to subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice, and go give us lots of love across social media where we post clips, highlights, and other fun bits from the show and more. We're on LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. Lots of good stuff on YouTube lately, and the subscribers are enjoying it, so make sure that's one of you as well. Go over there and get involved. With all that said, have an amazing week, and you'll be hearing from me again very shortly. Bye for now.